What would happen if a judge, who had spent 20 years deciding the fate of others, suddenly found himself standing before someone who knew every secret he had buried? Not rumors, not mistakes from a case file, but the one moment he had never confessed. This is not a story about crime. It is a story about judgment, about the kind delivered from a raised bench, and the kind that comes in the silence of the night when no gavel can stop it. Because sometimes, the most dangerous court is not the one filled with lawyers and police. It is the one inside a man's own soul. Before this story continues, take a moment. If you believe that no one is beyond redemption, if you believe mercy can still break even the hardest heart, then stay with us. Subscribe to Heaven Walks With Us for stories where justice meets grace, where broken lives encounter unexpected mercy. And if this story speaks to you at any point, share it. Someone you love may need it more than you realize. At 5:12 a.m., Judge Ethan Caldwell opened his eyes. He did not need an alarm. He had not needed one in years. The bedroom in Oak Park was still dark, the heavy curtains blocking the faint glow of the Chicago skyline in the distance. His breathing was already steady, controlled, as if his body had rehearsed this moment long before consciousness arrived. Beside him, his wife slept on her side, her back turned toward him. Marianne's hair fanned softly across the pillow. Even in sleep, there was tension in her shoulders, a quiet vigilance she had developed over the years. Ethan stared at the ceiling. For a brief moment, something flickered behind his eyes. A sound. A child's voice. He shut it down instantly. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood, careful not to wake her. The floor was cold. He welcomed it. Cold kept the mind sharp. Cold reminded him that discipline still mattered. The bathroom light snapped on. 5 minutes. Cold shower. No hesitation. Water hammered his shoulders as he counted silently. He did not think. Thinking led to memories, and memories were inefficient. By the time the water shut off, his jaw was set, his breathing even again. Downstairs, the kitchen lights glowed softly. Black coffee, no sugar, 2 slices of toast, no butter. Marianne stood at the counter, already dressed for the day. She turned when she heard him enter. "Morning," she said. "Morning." She watched him pour coffee, noticed the slight tremor in his hand before he steadied it against the counter. "You were talking again," she said carefully. "In your sleep." Ethan did not look at her. "I'm fine." "You said you were sorry," she continued. "You said you couldn't help." "I have court today," he replied, sharper than he intended. "I need focus." Marianne hesitated. "Ethan, it's been 15 years. His cup hit the counter harder than necessary. The sound echoed in the quiet kitchen. "I said I'm fine." Silence settled between them. Not anger. Something worse. Distance. She nodded slowly, the way someone does when they already know they won't be heard. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten as his driver waited by the curb. The ride into downtown Chicago followed the same route it always did. Quiet residential streets giving way to traffic, concrete, glass, and steel. From the back seat, Ethan watched the city wake up. Construction workers, students waiting for buses, a man handing a coffee to someone sleeping on a bench. At a red light, a boy on the corner looked up and waved at the car. Ethan's stomach tightened. The driver reached to turn up the radio. "Today marks 15 years since the unsolved death of 8-year-old..." "Turn it off," Ethan said. The courthouse loomed ahead, massive and immovable, stone and steel. Order made visible. Inside, staff moved with quiet efficiency. Heads nodded. Conversations lowered. People made space as he passed. Judge Caldwell did not raise his voice. He did not need to. In his chambers, his clerk waited with a tablet in her hands. "The docket is ready," she said. 2 standard cases first, then the last one." She paused. Ethan glanced up. "Go on." "The final defendant was arrested last night. No identification, no attorney requested, no phone call. Charges? Disturbance, but the report is vague. The officers said They said he didn't resist. Didn't argue. He just waited. Waited for what? She shook her head. They don't know. He keeps saying the same thing. What? I'm waiting. Ethan felt something shift. Subtle, almost imperceptible. He dismissed it immediately. There's one more thing, she added. Both arresting officers asked to be reassigned afterward. Why? They said being near him made them uncomfortable. Ethan stood and straightened his jacket, slipping into the role the building expected of him. Bring in the first case, he said. We'll proceed as scheduled. As he walked toward the courtroom doors, the weight of the gavel felt heavier than usual in his hand. For reasons he could not explain, Judge Ethan Caldwell had the unsettling sense that today, the court would not be judging others alone. The courtroom rose as Judge Ethan Caldwell entered. The room was tall and formal, paneled in dark wood polished by decades of gravity and authority. The American flag stood unmoving behind the bench. The seal of the court loomed above it all, an emblem meant to represent balance and order. Ethan took his seat. The gavel rested in his hand, heavier than it had felt in years. He ignored the sensation. Be seated. The first defendant was brought forward. Joaquin Herrera, 35, thin frame, dark circles beneath his eyes. His wrists bore the faint marks of handcuffs recently removed. He wore a borrowed jacket that didn't quite fit, sleeves too long, shoulders too narrow. He did not look at the judge when he sat. The charge was familiar. Distribution, repeat offense. The prosecutor spoke with efficiency, laying out evidence as if reading from a script that had been performed thousands of times before. Dates, quantities, prior convictions. Each point landed cleanly, predictably. When it was time for the defense, the attorney stood slowly, young, nervous, public defender. He spoke about circumstances, about illness, about children, about a wife whose medical bills had exceeded any paycheck Joaquin could legally earn. He did not deny the crime. He asked only for mercy. Joaquin finally looked up. His eyes were not defiant. They were exhausted. Ethan listened without expression. He had heard these words before. Different voices, same story. Hard lives did not excuse hard crimes. That was the principle he had built his career upon. Mr. Herrera, Ethan said, his voice level and controlled. You have been convicted of this offense twice before? Joaquin swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. You were given opportunities, leniency, warnings. I tried, Joaquin said quietly. I did. Ethan did not respond. This court finds you guilty, he continued. Given your history, the law allows little discretion. The courtroom held its breath. You are hereby sentenced to 15 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 8. The gavel came down. The sound was sharp, final. A woman in the gallery gasped. Joaquin's wife stood abruptly, her face crumpling as she clutched the bench in front of her. 3 children began to cry, confused, frightened, too young to understand what 15 years meant. Joaquin did not shout. He stared at the floor as the deputies moved toward him. His shoulders slumped, not in anger, but in something closer to resignation. As he was turned away, he looked back once. Judge, he said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. I hope when your day comes, the one judging you shows more mercy than you did. Ethan did not react. The second case followed quickly. Auto theft. Second offense. Clear evidence. A guilty plea entered in hopes of clemency. 8 years. The gavel fell again. By the time the clock reached 12:24 p.m., Ethan felt as though he had been operating on instinct alone. Sentence. Verdict. Order. Control. His clerk approached the bench quietly. The final case is ready, Your Honor. Ethan nodded. Bring him in. The doors opened slowly. 2 officers escorted the last defendant forward. The man was barefoot. That was the first thing people noticed. He wore simple white clothing, clean but unremarkable, as if he had stepped out of a different place entirely. His posture was straight, unforced. He did not look around the room with curiosity or fear. He simply walked. There was no resistance, no hesitation. When he reached the table, he did not wait to be instructed. He sat. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Ethan felt irritation rise. Procedure mattered. "Stand," he said. The man rose. Their eyes met. For a fraction of a second, something passed between them, something Ethan could not name, not challenge, not submission, awareness. "State your full name for the record," Ethan said. The man tilted his head slightly, as if considering the question. "Is that what you need right now?" he asked. The room stiffened. Ethan's grip tightened on the gavel. "This is a court of law," he said. "You will answer the question." The man's gaze did not waver. "Names change," he replied calmly. "But truth doesn't." A ripple of whispers moved through the gallery. Ethan leaned forward. "You are charged with disturbing the peace and refusing identification," he said. "This court does not tolerate games." The man nodded slowly. "I know." Something in his tone unsettled Ethan more than defiance ever could. "How do you know my clerk's name?" the man asked suddenly, turning his head slightly. The room froze. The clerk's breath caught. No one had spoken her name aloud. Ethan felt heat rise behind his eyes. "That is enough," he said. "Answer the question or you will be held in contempt." The man looked back at him. "Before you judge me," he said softly, "there are 2 sentences you need to hear." Ethan stood abruptly. "This court," but the man continued, "you have spent 15 years punishing others for a decision you never faced." The word struck with surgical precision. "And today," the man added, "you made it worse." Silence swallowed the room. Ethan felt his pulse in his ears. "Remove him," he ordered. The officers stepped forward. They reached out and stopped. Their hands hovered inches from the man's arms, as if an invisible boundary had been drawn between them. The officers exchanged glances, confused, unsettled. Ethan stared. For the first time in his career, the gavel slipped slightly in his hand, and somewhere deep within him, a door he had welded shut 15 years earlier began to crack. The courtroom did not know what to do with silence like this. It had heard shouting before. Confessions, threats, bargaining. It had absorbed grief and anger for decades without consequence. But this was different. This silence was heavy, deliberate, as if the room itself were waiting. Judge Ethan Caldwell stood behind the bench, his hand resting on the edge of the desk. The gavel lay untouched. The 2 officers remained frozen, arms extended halfway, their fingers trembling as if resisting a pressure they could not see or name. "Step back," Ethan snapped. The officers obeyed immediately, relief flashing across their faces as they retreated. One of them swallowed hard and glanced at the man in white, then quickly looked away. Ethan drew a breath and forced his voice into steadiness. "You will address the court properly," he said. "This is your final warning." The man inclined his head, not in submission, but acknowledgement. "I understand," he said. Something about the tone unsettled several people in the room. It carried no fear, no sarcasm. Just certainty. Ethan turned to his clerk. "Read the charges," he said. She hesitated, then complied. "Disturbing the peace, failure to provide identification, resisting." She paused, frowning at the screen. "Actually, there's no record of resistance." The prosecutor cleared his throat. "Your Honor, officers reported the defendant was cooperative, unusually so." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Sir," he said, addressing the man directly, "you are standing in a court of law. You will state your name." The man looked around the room slowly, at the attorneys, the officers, the spectators. His gaze lingered briefly on a woman in the 3rd row, her eyes already filled with tears for reasons she did not yet understand. Then he looked back at Ethan. "What would you do?" he asked quietly. "If the truth didn't fit inside your procedures?" Ethan felt irritation flare. "This court deals in facts," he said, "not philosophy." The man's expression softened slightly. "So did you," he replied. A murmur moved through the gallery. Ethan struck the gavel once. Order! The sound echoed, sharp and final, or at least it was supposed to be. The man did not flinch. Your Honor, the prosecutor said carefully. Perhaps we should... No, Ethan interrupted. We will proceed. He leaned forward. You claimed earlier that you were waiting, Ethan said. Waiting for what? For this moment, the man replied. Ethan felt a faint pressure behind his eyes. And now that it's arrived? He pressed. The man met his gaze fully. Now you have to listen. The clerk shifted in her seat. She had worked with Judge Caldwell for 10 years. She had seen defendants tremble, cry, curse, plead. She had never seen anyone speak to him like this. Ethan inhaled slowly. You've already said enough to earn contempt, he said. This court can sentence you right now. Yes, the man said gently. You could. There was no challenge in the words, only acknowledgement. And yet, he added, you haven't. Ethan straightened. Do not presume to know my intentions. The man nodded. I know, he said. You tell yourself that every sentence you deliver is about order, about safety, about doing what must be done. Ethan's fingers curled slightly against the bench. But there are nights, the man continued, when the law is very far away. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. There are nights, he said, when you wake up before dawn, heart racing, hearing a voice you pretend not to recognize. Marianne's face flashed unbidden through Ethan's mind. Her concern, her patience, her quiet fear. That voice, the man said, is not accusing you. Ethan swallowed. It's asking why. That's enough, Ethan said, louder now. You will answer the charges or you will be removed. The man tilted his head. Removed to where? He asked. The question landed differently than expected. To a cell, Ethan snapped. To custody. The man considered this. You've put many people in cells, he said. Some of them deserved it. Ethan felt a chill creep up his spine. And some, the man added, needed something else. The prosecutor stood abruptly. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We should recess. No, Ethan said. He did not know why the word came out so quickly. He only knew that stopping now felt dangerous. What do you want? Ethan demanded. The man's eyes softened. I want you to remember, he said. The room held its breath. Remember who you were, he continued, before fear taught you to call punishment justice. Ethan laughed sharply. You don't know anything about me. The man's gaze did not waver. You grew up in a small apartment, he said calmly. South Side. Your mother worked double shifts. You studied by a flickering lamp because the electricity was unreliable. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. You promised yourself, the man continued, that if you ever had power, you would use it to protect people like her. Ethan's mouth went dry. The clerk's tablet slipped slightly in her hands. You worked nights, the man said, cleaning floors while memorizing case law. You believed justice could heal. Ethan felt the room tilt. No, he said. And then, the man said softly, one night changed everything. Ethan's vision blurred at the edges. Rain, red light, small hands. The gavel clattered against the bench as his grip failed. The man stepped closer, his voice lowering, carrying only to Ethan now. You didn't choose evil, he said. You chose fear. Ethan staggered back into his chair. The courtroom erupted in whispers, but he heard none of them. The man straightened and spoke clearly. And today, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber, you sentenced the wrong man without ever knowing why. Ethan looked up sharply. What did you say? The man met his eyes. The story you buried, he said, has just walked back into your court. Silence fell again, thicker than before, and somewhere deep inside Judge Ethan Caldwell, the lie that had held his life together began to collapse. The silence did not break. It spread, from the bench to the jury rail, from the officers near the aisle to the spectators in the back rows. Judge Ethan Caldwell sat motionless, his palms flat against the wood as if grounding himself. The words still echoed in his head. The story you buried has just walked back into your court. He lifted his eyes slowly. Explain, he said. The man in white did not move closer this time. He did not need to. I will, he said. But not just for you. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor shifted in his seat, discomfort tightening his posture. He had tried cases for years, had faced hostile defendants and hostile judges alike. But this was something else entirely. This was not argument. It was exposure. The man turned his head slightly. Officer Daniel, he said. One of the arresting officers stiffened. Yes? The officer replied automatically, before realizing no one had called his name. The man's eyes met his. You were thinking about resigning this morning, he said calmly. You told your wife you were tired of seeing the same faces come through those cells. The officer's jaw tightened. You said the job was changing you, the man continued. That it was making you numb. A hush fell over the room. Officer Daniel swallowed. That's not in the report, he said quietly. No, the man replied. It isn't. He turned again. Alyssa. The clerk froze. Her name hung in the air like a held breath. You almost called in sick today, the man said gently. You didn't sleep last night. Alyssa's fingers curled around her tablet. You were thinking about your father, he continued. About the last argument you never resolved. Her eyes filled despite her effort to remain composed. You wondered, the man said, if he died disappointed in you. Alyssa shook her head, forcing herself to breathe. That's not possible, she whispered. The man's expression softened. He was proud, he said simply. He always was. A sound escaped her before she could stop it. A quiet sob. She covered her mouth, humiliated by the suddenness of it, but no one laughed. No one spoke. Judge Caldwell's chest tightened. Enough, Ethan said hoarsely. You don't get to do this. Do what? The man asked. Invade people's lives, Ethan snapped. This is a courtroom, not a confession booth. The man turned back to him. You built this place to avoid confession, he said. The words landed hard. Ethan stood abruptly. You are manipulating them, he said, using coincidence and suggestion. If that were true, the man replied, you wouldn't be shaking. Ethan looked down. His hands were trembling. He clenched them into fists. You think knowing names gives you authority here? Ethan said. You think insight replaces law? The man did not argue. He walked a few steps toward the center of the room, his bare feet silent against the floor. The law tells you what is permitted, he said, but it cannot tell you what is right. The prosecutor stood again. Your Honor, he said urgently, this has gone far beyond acceptable. Sit down, Ethan said without looking at him. The prosecutor hesitated. Ethan turned sharply. Sit down. The man watched the exchange quietly. You see, he said, even now, you reach for control. Ethan's jaw tightened. Because control keeps people safe, he said. Does it? The man asked. He turned toward the gallery. There is a woman here, he said, scanning the faces. Second row, blue coat. A woman flinched. You came today hoping the judge would be lenient, the man said. Your son is in holding. You prayed in your car for mercy. The woman's eyes widened. You promised God you'd change, the man continued. But you don't believe he's listening anymore. Her shoulders shook as tears spilled freely. A low sound of discomfort spread through the room. This is wrong, someone whispered. Judge Caldwell felt a pressure building behind his eyes. You need to stop, he said. The man turned back to him. You called this place a house of justice, he said. But justice without mercy hardens into something else. Ethan shook his head. You don't know what this job requires. I do, the man said. Ethan laughed bitterly. You've never sat where I sit. The man's gaze held steady. I have stood before judges, he said quietly. Many times. Ethan faltered. The words struck him with unexpected weight. The man took another step forward. You believe that order must be maintained at all costs, he said. That mercy invites chaos. Ethan said nothing. But chaos, the man continued, is what grows when people are treated as their worst moment forever. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. You have convinced yourself, the man said, that your severity protects the innocent. Ethan's voice was low. It does. The man shook his head. Sometimes, he said, it only protects your fear. Ethan's breath hitched. You don't know what I've seen, he said. The man nodded. I know exactly what you saw, he replied. I know the night. I know the rain. The room seemed to tilt. You know nothing, Ethan said. I know the intersection, the man said softly. I know the color of the light. Ethan staggered back against his chair. No, he whispered. The man's voice dropped, caring only to him now. I know the child's name. Ethan's heart slammed violently. Say it, he demanded, his voice cracking. Say it. The man held his gaze. Noah. The name detonated inside him. The gavel slipped from Ethan's hand and struck the floor with a sound that echoed through the chamber. Gasps filled the room. Ethan gripped the bench, breathing hard, his vision blurring. The man straightened. And now, he said clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the courtroom, you are ready to hear the rest. No one moved. No one spoke. Because every person in that room understood the same terrifying truth at the same moment. This was no longer just Judge Ethan Caldwell on trial. The courtroom itself had been called to account. The courtroom faded. Not physically. Every bench, every wall, every face remained where it was, but inside Judge Ethan Caldwell, the present began to loosen its grip. The ticking clock dissolved into something else. A sound older, louder. Rain. It came first as memory, then as sensation. Cold drops streaking across a windshield. Streetlights bleeding into long yellow smears. The hum of an engine idling too long at a red light. Ethan gripped the edge of the bench, his knuckles white. No, he said. You don't get to do this. The man did not raise his voice. You already are, he replied. The rain grew heavier. Chicago, 15 years earlier. Ethan was younger then, 27, a junior prosecutor with a future he believed in. He wore a suit that still felt new, his tie loosened, his shoulders tense from a week that had not gone his way. He had lost a case that day, a technicality. A man he believed was dangerous had walked free. The kind of loss that sits in the chest and refuses to move. The bar had been nearly empty. One drink became two, not enough to be drunk, enough to dull the edge. He should have gone straight home. Instead, he drove. The rain intensified, hammering against the glass as his car rolled through downtown streets slick with oil and reflection. The wipers struggled, one of them lagging slightly behind the other. He made a mental note to fix it. Later, the light turned red. He stopped. And then he saw him, a small figure darting between cars, slipping on the wet pavement, scrambling to stay upright. Too small clearly, too fast, too desperate. A boy, 8, maybe 9. The boy reached the driver's side window and slammed his hands against the glass. The sound was sharp, urgent. Help me, the boy screamed. Please. Ethan's breath caught. The boy's face was pressed close now. Wide eyes, brown, terrified. His hair was plastered to his forehead, rainwater mixing with blood from scraped knees. A superhero logo clung to his shirt, soaked and stretched. Behind him, movement. 2 men, older, larger, running. One slipped, cursed, regained his footing. The other never slowed. Metal glinted beneath the streetlight. Ethan's heart pounded violently. Time fractured. In the courtroom, Ethan's knees buckled. He sank back into his chair as gas rippled around him. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know what would happen. The man's voice remained steady. You knew enough. Back then, Ethan's hands had tightened on the steering wheel. 4 seconds. That was all it took. 4 seconds to see the knives. 4 seconds to hear the boy's breath hitch. 4 seconds to imagine his own safety shattering. Fear surged, raw and overwhelming. He saw his career flash before him, his future, his life unraveling if he intervened. What if the men had guns? What if they followed him? What if he died? The light changed. Green. The engine responded instantly. Ethan pressed the accelerator. The boy screamed again. Please! Please! The car surged forward, tires cutting through water. In the rear view mirror, the child fell. The men closed in. Ethan did not stop. In the courtroom, a woman sobbed openly now. Someone whispered a prayer under their breath. Ethan covered his face with both hands. I was scared, he said. I was just scared. The man nodded. Yes, he said. You were. The rain did not stop after that night. It fell on the alley 3 blocks away, where the boy's body was found the next morning. It washed the blood toward the gutter. It soaked into the concrete. The report would say the child died quickly. The truth was different. The boy cried out for his mother with his final breath. Ethan had read the article the next day. He remembered holding the paper, his coffee growing cold in his hands. He had told himself there was nothing he could do now. He told himself the police would handle it. He told himself silence was survival. And then he built a life on that silence. In the courtroom, Ethan looked up at the man with red-rimmed eyes. You're wrong, he said hoarsely. I paid for it. The man tilted his head. How? With every sentence, Ethan said. With every criminal I put away. I made sure they paid. The man's gaze softened, but his voice did not. You punished strangers, he said, so you wouldn't have to face yourself. Ethan shook his head violently. I tried to make it right. You tried to make it quiet. The words cut deeper than accusation. I read the report, the man continued. You never called the police, never testified, never told anyone what you saw. Ethan's chest tightened painfully. I was young, he said. I didn't know what to do. You knew what was right, the man replied. You were afraid of the cost. Silence pressed in from all sides. And fear, the man said gently, became your law. The room felt impossibly small now. Ethan saw it clearly, the transformation, the way mercy began to feel dangerous, the way control felt safer, the way punishment numbed the ache just enough to survive another day. That night, the man said, did not end when the rain stopped. Ethan's hand shook. It followed you home, into your marriage, into your courtroom. He looked toward the gallery, where Marianne would sometimes sit, hoping to recognize the man she married. It followed you into every decision. Ethan swallowed hard. I can't undo it, he whispered. No, the man said. You can't. The acknowledgement hit harder than condemnation. You can't save the child, he continued. You can't change that night. Ethan closed his eyes. But, the man said, stepping closer, you can stop letting it destroy everything else. Ethan opened his eyes again. The rain was still there, but it no longer drowned out the sound of his own breathing. The man's voice dropped, caring only to him now. There is more you don't know, he said. Ethan's heart skipped. About that night? No, the man replied. About today. Ethan frowned weakly. The man straightened and spoke clearly, his voice echoing through the chamber. The man you sentenced this morning, he said, is not just another defendant. Ethan's breath caught painfully. He is part of the same story. Ethan looked up slowly, dread pooling in his chest. What do you mean? The man met his eyes. He is the reason this night came back to find you. The rain inside Ethan finally stopped, and the truth, long buried, prepared to finish what it had started. The name did not arrive gently. It struck like a blunt object. Judge Ethan Caldwell stared at the man in white, the echoes of rain still clinging to his thoughts. The courtroom had grown unbearably quiet, as if every breath now required permission. The man you sentenced this morning, the stranger repeated, is not just another defendant. Ethan swallowed. Say what you're going to say. The stranger nodded. Once. Joaquin Herrera, he said, is the boy's brother. The words rearranged the air. For a moment, Ethan could not process them. His mind reached for structure, for distance, anything that might soften the impact, but there was nothing to grab. That's not possible, Ethan said. It's a common name. The stranger did not argue. He gestured, and images began to form. Not visions, not projections, but facts spoken with such clarity that they felt alive. After the boy died, he said, the Herrera family collapsed. Ethan felt his chest tighten. The father, the stranger continued, broke first. He blamed himself for letting his son go out in the rain. He started drinking. Then he started disappearing. Eventually, he left for good. A woman in the gallery gasped softly. The mother, the stranger said, stopped getting out of bed. She barely ate, barely spoke. Grief hollowed her out. Ethan's mouth went dry. And Joaquin, the stranger said, was 20. Ethan's fingers curled into the wood of the bench. 20 years old, in school, smart, studying engineering at a public university on partial scholarship. The prosecutor's pen slipped from his fingers. When the father left, the stranger continued, Joaquin became the provider. Ethan shook his head slowly. You don't know that. I know exactly, the stranger replied. He quit school, took a job at an auto parts store, minimum wage, long hours, not enough. Ethan thought of the borrowed jacket, the tired eyes. The bills didn't stop, the stranger said. The rent, the electricity, the medication his mother needed just to function. Ethan's breathing grew shallow. He tried to stay clean, the stranger went on, tried to do it the right way. The courtroom leaned in collectively, as if pulled forward by gravity. But desperation has a voice, the stranger said, and it speaks loudest when hope is quiet. Ethan felt something twist deep inside him. So he made a choice, the stranger continued. A small one, at first, selling a little, just enough to cover the gap. The prosecutor stared straight ahead, unmoving. He wasn't violent, the stranger said. He wasn't ambitious. He wasn't proud. Ethan remembered Joaquin's face when the sentence was read. Not anger, exhaustion. He was surviving, the stranger said. Poorly, but surviving. Ethan's voice barely worked. And I sent him away. You did, the stranger said. For 15 years. A child's quiet sniffle cut through the silence. Ethan looked toward the gallery. Joaquin's wife sat rigid, one hand pressed against her mouth. Her children clung to her coat, confused by a pain they could not name. Ethan's vision blurred. You didn't just sentence a criminal, the stranger said. You sentenced a man shaped by the consequences of your silence. Ethan's chest felt like it might split open. This isn't fair, he whispered. No, the stranger agreed. It isn't. The acknowledgement broke something. Ethan pushed back from the bench and stood, his knees trembling. All these years, he said hoarsely, I thought I was balancing the scales. The stranger watched him carefully. You were adding weight, he said, to the same side. Ethan shook his head. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, the stranger replied, not unkindly. The truth settled in. The night he drove away, the boy who died, the brother who carried the aftermath, the judge who punished the result. A perfect circle. Ethan felt nausea rise. I thought if I was hard enough, he said, maybe it would mean something. It meant something, the stranger said. Just not what you hoped. Ethan lowered himself back into the chair, the strength gone from his legs. Every harsh sentence, the stranger continued, was you trying to imprison your guilt. The words landed with brutal clarity. When you denied mercy, the stranger said, you were denying it to yourself. Ethan closed his eyes. He saw it now, the pattern he had never named. The satisfaction that followed severity, the brief relief, the emptiness that returned by morning. You believed cruelty was justice, the stranger said, Because mercy felt dangerous. Ethan exhaled shakily. I thought mercy would make me weak. The stranger shook his head. It made you human, he said. And that frightened you. Silence pressed down again. Do you understand now, the stranger asked gently, why this moment had to happen here? Ethan opened his eyes. In front of everyone, he said. Yes, the stranger replied, because the lie was public, and the truth must be too. Ethan looked around the courtroom, at the officers, the attorneys, the spectators who had come expecting routine and were now witnesses to something far heavier. I ruined his life, Ethan said. You wounded it, the stranger corrected. It is not the same thing. Ethan looked up sharply. You're saying it can be repaired? I'm saying, the stranger replied, that justice does not end with punishment. Ethan's throat tightened. But the sentence can be reviewed, the stranger said. Ethan frowned. Legally? There are mechanisms, the stranger said. Extraordinary hearings. Discretion. Ethan's heart began to race, not with fear, but with something unfamiliar. Possibility. And the boy? Ethan asked quietly. The stranger's gaze softened. The boy's story does not end in the alley, he said. It ends with what you do next. Ethan felt tears spill freely now. For 15 years, the stranger continued, you believed the night defined you. Ethan nodded. It doesn't, the stranger said. What you choose now does. The room seemed to breathe again. Ethan lifted his head, eyes red, voice trembling. What happens to me? He asked. The stranger met his gaze. That, he said, depends on whether you are willing to be judged by the same mercy you've denied others. The truth settled, heavy but clear. The circle had closed. And for the first time since the rain, Ethan Caldwell understood that judgment was no longer the question. Redemption was. No one moved. Not the officers near the aisle. Not the prosecutor gripping the edge of his table. Not the spectators who had come for routine and found themselves watching something they did not have words for. Judge Ethan Caldwell sat as if the chair had become a weight. Across from him, the man in white stood with the stillness of someone who did not need to prove anything. Ethan wiped his face with the back of his hand, furious at the tears and unable to stop them. You keep talking about mercy, he said, voice raw, as if it's a switch, as if I can just, accept it, and everything is fine. The man's gaze did not harden. Everything will not be fine, he said. The honesty hit harder than comfort. Ethan's chest tightened. Then what are you offering me? The man stepped closer, stopping at a distance that felt deliberate, close enough to be seen clearly, far enough that Ethan could still pretend he had space. I'm offering you what you have refused to offer others, the man said. Not a loophole, not an excuse, not a performance. Ethan swallowed. A second chance, the man continued. Real mercy, not denial. Ethan shook his head slowly, almost laughing. I left a child to die, he whispered. I destroyed his family with silence, and this morning I condemned his brother with my own hand. His voice rose, breaking. I did it again. The man nodded. Yes, he said quietly. You did. Ethan gripped the bench. Say it, he demanded, desperation turning his words sharp. Say I deserve whatever comes. The man looked at him with something that was not pity, not approval, but understanding. You deserve consequences, he said, and you will face them. The room seemed to exhale in unison. Ethan froze. Then what's the point of mercy? The man's voice softened without losing its weight. Consequences are what happen in the world, he said. Mercy is what happens in the soul. Ethan's breath caught. You think the boy's mother will stop grieving because you are forgiven? The man asked. You think the alley becomes less cold? You think a prison sentence becomes harmless? Ethan's eyes lowered. No, he whispered. No, the man repeated. Forgiveness does not erase the damage you caused. Ethan's throat tightened. Then forgiveness is worthless. The man shook his head. It is the only thing that can keep the damage from multiplying, he said. Ethan looked up. For 15 years, the man continued, you have lived as if guilt is the price of morality, as if the weight on your chest is proof that you understand what you did. Ethan flinched, because it was true. But guilt is not repentance, the man said. Guilt is a cage. Ethan's hands trembled. It's all I have. The man's voice lowered. It is all you kept, he said. Because if you released it, you would have to change. Ethan blinked, tears spilling again. The word landed in him like a verdict. Change. The prosecutor shifted, uncomfortable, as if he could feel the gravity of the moment and wanted it to belong to someone else. An officer in the back row quietly made the sign of the cross, then lowered his hand as if embarrassed. Ethan stared at the man in white. What are you? He asked, barely audible. That you can say these things like you know them? The man did not answer directly. Instead, he extended one hand, slowly, openly. The marks on his palm were visible now. Not fresh wounds. Old scars. Deep. Circular. Like something had gone through and never fully disappeared. Several people gasped. Alyssa pressed her hand to her mouth. Her eyes darted between Ethan and the man, as if her mind could not choose which reality to accept. Ethan's gaze locked on the scars. His body went rigid. No, he whispered. The man's voice was gentle. You have judged thousands, he said. You have weighed them, measured them, decided their value in minutes. Ethan swallowed hard. And yet, the man continued, you refuse to believe you can be measured by anything except your worst moment. Ethan's voice cracked. Because that moment is who I am. The man shook his head. That moment is what you did, he said. It is not what you are destined to remain. Ethan looked away, as if the words were too bright. From the gallery, a child's quiet sob rose again, thin and fragile. Joaquin's youngest clung to his mother's coat, eyes wide, watching the judge who had taken his father away. Ethan saw the child, and something in him fractured further. The man in white followed his gaze. That child will remember this day, he said quietly. Not the statutes, not the arguments, the outcome. Ethan's shoulders shook. What can I do? He asked, voice small. What can I possibly do? The man lowered his hand slightly, but did not withdraw it. First, he said, you tell the truth. Ethan's head snapped up. To who? He asked. To yourself, the man replied. To your wife. To the world you built your reputation inside. Ethan flinched. That will destroy me. The man nodded. It will destroy what is false, he said. And it will hurt. Ethan's breathing grew rapid. Second, the man continued, you face what you did in the only way you can now, by stopping the cycle. Ethan's eyes flicked toward the door where Joaquin had been led away earlier. The sentence, Ethan whispered. Yes, the man said. You set an extraordinary hearing. You reopen what you rushed through. You look at the full story you refuse to see. Ethan's mouth went dry. And if people think I'm weak, he asked. The man's gaze held steady. Then let them, he said. Ethan stared, stunned by the simplicity. You have been strong in the wrong direction for 15 years, and the man added, try strength that repairs. Ethan's throat tightened. And the boy? The man's expression softened with a sadness that felt ancient. You cannot bring him back, he said, but you can honor him by becoming the man he needed that night. Ethan's eyes closed. The words sounded impossible, and yet they landed like a key turning in a lock. You're offering me forgiveness, Ethan whispered, and you're telling me I still have to pay? Yes, the man said. Ethan's voice broke. Why would anyone accept that? The man's hand rose again, palm open, scars visible. Because mercy does not remove the truth, he said. It gives you the courage to live inside it. Ethan opened his eyes and looked at the hand. His own hand trembled as it rose from the bench, hesitating inches away. He did not touch. Not yet. But for the first time in 15 years, Judge Ethan Caldwell understood the difference between being condemned and being called. The cost of the truth was real, and somehow, so was the hope on the other side of it. The courtroom did not applaud. There was no dramatic declaration, no thunderous conclusion, no moment that felt clean or triumphant. Judge Ethan Caldwell simply closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the man in white was still there, silent, patient, but the urgency had shifted. The confrontation was over. What remained was choice. Ethan stood slowly. "The court is adjourned," he said, his voice steady but unfamiliar even to himself. "This session will reconvene tomorrow morning for an extraordinary review hearing." Gasps rippled through the room. The prosecutor turned sharply. "Your Honor," Ethan raised a hand. "I am aware of the procedure," he said. "I am also aware of my discretion." He paused, then added quietly, "and my responsibility." The gavel came down. Not hard, not soft, different. People filed out slowly, speaking in hushed voices, as if the air itself had changed density. Alyssa remained behind, standing near the bench. "Are you all right?" she asked. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years, did not see an extension of the machine. "I don't know yet," he said. "But I will be." She nodded, tears welling again, and whispered, "Thank you." He did not ask for what. That evening, Ethan drove home alone. He rolled the windows down despite the chill, letting cold air rush in, sharp and honest. The city lights blurred past as if he were seeing them for the first time. When he pulled into the driveway, the house was lit. Mary Ann was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. She turned when she heard the door. The spoon clattered to the counter. Ethan stood there, unsure how to begin. She crossed the room in 3 steps and stopped inches from him. "You look different," she said. "I am," he replied. Her eyes searched his face. "What happened?" Ethan's breath shook. "The man you married," he said, voice low, "has been gone a long time." Her lips parted. "He came back today," Ethan continued, "and I need to tell you everything." They sat at the kitchen table long after the food grew cold. Ethan did not spare himself. He spoke of the rain, the child, the silence, the 15 years of punishment disguised as justice. Mary Ann did not interrupt. When he finished, she rested her hands flat on the table, her knuckles white. "I wondered," she said quietly, "what you were running from." Ethan bowed his head. "I was afraid you'd leave if you knew." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm afraid of losing you to this," she said. "Not of the truth." He broke then, quietly, fully, and for the first time, she did not feel shut out. The next morning, the courtroom was full again. News cameras lined the back wall. The extraordinary hearing had traveled fast. Joaquin Herrera was brought in, confusion etched across his face. Ethan listened this time, really listened. He reviewed the case in full, the circumstances, the history, the loss that had shaped every decision Joaquin had made since he was 20. When Ethan spoke, the room held its breath. "This court recognizes that justice must be both firm and discerning," he said. "Punishment alone cannot repair what has been broken." He adjusted his glasses, steadying himself. "The original sentence is hereby vacated." A murmur erupted. "In its place," Ethan continued, "this court orders a revised sentence of 2 years, suspended upon completion of a comprehensive rehabilitation program, probation, and family support services." Joaquin stared. His wife collapsed into sobs. Ethan raised the gavel once more. "This is not mercy without accountability," he said. "It is accountability with a future." The gavel fell. That afternoon, paperwork began for something new. Ethan met with advocates, social workers, and legal advisors. By evening, the framework was in place. They called it the Noah Herrera Foundation. Its mission was simple and brutal in its honesty: to protect vulnerable children before fear or silence could destroy them. Mandatory reporting protocols, emergency response coordination, legal advocacy for at-risk families, education. Intervention. Ethan did not place his name on the building. He did not want credit. He wanted continuity. Weeks passed. Change did not come all at once. Some colleagues questioned his judgment. Others whispered about weakness. A few quietly followed his lead. Ethan accepted all of it. At night, he still dreamed. But the dreams changed. The rain came less often. When it did, he no longer ran. One evening, as he locked his office, Ethan rested his hand on the gavel. It was still wood, still worn. But it no longer felt like a weapon. It felt like a tool, a reminder. Justice could still be firm, but now it would be alive. Some stories end with punishment. Others end with escape. This one ends with responsibility and hope. If you believe that even the most hardened hearts can be changed, that mercy does not erase truth but transforms it, then you belong here. Subscribe to Heaven Walks with Us for stories where broken lives encounter grace, where judgment gives way to redemption, and where no one is ever beyond the reach of mercy. If this story moved you, share it. Someone you know may be waiting for the courage to face their own truth. Because sometimes the gavel that changes a life is the one laid down.